Good evening, Assalamu alaikum, and a very warm welcome to Visionary Pulse with me, your host Farzana Mayet, a segment which focuses on chatting to game changers and change makers. And tonight is certainly no different, where we're going to be bringing you one such game changer and change maker. So we go into Elma Akob's profile, who is a social entrepreneur, global speaker, and advocate for African empowerment through storytelling. At just 25, she is a three-time graduate currently pursuing a PhD in corporate sustainability. As the founder and CEO of Elevate Africa Academy, an award-winning platform, she has also trained over 400 individuals across 8 African countries, helping them embrace their voices and natural accents to tell their stories with confidence. An award-winning TEDx speaker and voiceover artist for Disney, Netflix, and DSTV, Elma's influence spans global platforms. Recognized as one of the top 10 outstanding young persons in the world 2022 by Junior Chambers International, the Women of Wonder South Africa, and most creative entrepreneur at the Gauteng Women in Business Awards, and a Sunday World Unsung Hero Entrepreneurship Award as well. Elma's work champions sustainable development, women's leadership, and the elevation of African narratives. Wow. Elma, very good evening and a warm welcome to Visionary Pulse with me. It's an honor and a privilege to have you here.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me.
Such a vast profile. Tell me, where do you find the time?
Wait till you hear my sleeping patterns. I think where there is passion, you will always find time.
Absolutely. Well said. I think, you've just summed it up in such a short sentence, because where there's passion, you don't see the time, right? Mm-hmm. And, there's a very famous saying that, I prescribed, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Exactly.
Right? So tell me the birth of Elevate Africa. How did that come about?
So Elevate Africa Academy was a company that was birthed when I realized I had somewhat of an edge over my peers because of how I spoke. So I would walk into rooms and I would speak, or I would ask questions, and the lecturers would notice something about me. And it wasn't
so your
because,
vibe was just
yes,
there.
And it wasn't because I was the most intelligent in the room or, I looked the best, but it was every single time I would speak, everyone would assume I was the smartest in the room. And so I recognized my superpower was in my ability to speak. Okay. And if we think about public speaking, it's currently ranked the 4th most in-demand skill globally. And it's one of those skills that is required, I think, by every man, woman, and child. Whether you're an engineer, an accountant, a lawyer, a teacher, the moment you speak is the moment people trust you.
Absolutely.
And so if they listen to you, and even though you might be very intelligent, and they don't trust you based on how you speak, you're not going to get the job, or they'll find someone else to do the skill. And so Elevate Africa was birthed from a place of thinking, here's a gift that I was naturally given. How can I pass on this gift to other Africans so that even though we are the most creative, dynamic, and intelligent continent, we can communicate that so that everyone knows who we are.
Wow, so you were affording the opportunities to many other Africans out there.
Yes.
You want to create the same space, and that's incredible, Elma. So tell me how, you mentioned how the birth of that happened, mm-hmm. or why rather, the why came into factor, and that's most important. Mm-hmm. You found your why. So some of the setbacks, some of the hurdles that you faced while forming Elevate Africa.
So the company was founded in the thick of COVID-19, and I think
wow.
There's something phenomenal about companies that started during COVID. They have this
resilience,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. They have this resilient spirit that, look, we faced a global pandemic. What is ESCOM?
What else?
What is, what are all these other small things that we're engaging in? So in the thick of COVID, we decided to launch the business, meaning it was completely virtually. And then apart from that, I think I was 21 at the time. Now, being a young black woman in South Africa and trying to get funding, for example, is a major issue.
Absolutely.
Because you walk into banks and you say these big amounts of money, you say what it is that you're looking for, and they look at you, and they look at your ID, and they look at your age, and they look at you again, and automatically they think, if I give you all of this money, you're going to go spend it off somewhere.
You're going to party.
Exactly. And so there's always this push of, we want more young business owners. We want to see the youth leading businesses, but the trust isn't there.
I love what you just said, because it's so true. Our youth are facing this right now.
Exactly.
This is like a crisis whereby they're not getting trusted upon by big corporates.
Exactly. And what we need essentially is funding. We don't have the connections. We don't have the family members with deep-rooted pockets or whatever the case may be. So we come for funding to these institutions, and instead we get, a little newspaper spread during June to say, you know, youth businesses, but when the actual support is needed, that's where it's not actually there. And so that was a big thing that I faced, and having to, you know, work with other young people, because everyone we employ is under 30.
Okay.
And so we realize that we are not only building ourselves, we're trying to build another generation. And the easiest way to grow South Africa is to grow the young people, because we are essentially building each other. So facing that challenge, but coming out of it and saying, look, when we gather together, we can achieve things. So we might not be able to get the 50,000 or the 1 million that we need from the companies, but when we gather our resources and our strengths together as young people, that's where you start to see amazing things happening. And so we thought, look, without the money, without this, without that, we're just going to go ahead and do
We're still going to make it happen. I love your energy.
And then from that, yeah.
The sky's the limit, right?
Exactly.
So you make things happen.
Yes.
You're a positive thinker. You just go out there and make things happen. So the birth of Elevate Africa happened, and you mentioned obviously the lack of funding thereof. You never had the funding support that you obviously quite anticipated, but you made it work.
Exactly.
You made it work. And currently now, some of the success stories, you know why? I'd love to elaborate on these, because it's so important for our viewers to be able to attest to these kind of great stories that come out from a thought, a point of ideology, you know, that somebody had, or epiphany somebody had, and it's grown into something this massive. You know, kudos to you, Elma. But the thing is, let's go into the nitty-gritties of it as well.
Thank you so much for that question. I think soft skills are making a re-entry into the market.
A big comeback, hey?
Young people are realizing that, young people are realizing that we have our hands. We have, you know, so those who are braiding hair are taking it more seriously. Those who can do makeup are taking it more seriously. Those who know how to make clothes are taking it more seriously. And so we're moving away from the traditional degree jobs, and young people are trying to make something out of the soft skills. And therein was Elevate Africa, like you rightfully said, an ideology of, I'm a speaker. I'm a good speaker. How can I transfer the skill of speaking? How can I monetize the skill of speaking? And so that's the mentality that you go through. And now you're able to look back and say, I've created an award-winning business. And so some of our success stories, I think it was in 2022 where we won the top youth-owned brand, education brand in South Africa.
Wow.
And that was amazing. What a recognition.
That is commendable, hey?
It's so great. And I think even though the Women of Wonder Awards, it's so great to get recognized, because it almost feels like someone's looking at you, or someone has recognized that you've put in the hard work and you're not just working in a silo. People are seeing what you're doing. They're seeing the impact that you're making, and they want to recognize it. And so that was really, really great. I've been invited to different countries because of the company that I do. I've been to 4 continents speaking about public speaking and the ability to communicate. We've trained people. We're currently in schools as well. We're training in Crawford. We're basically trying to get public speaking recognized as a skill that separates.
And that's something that's absolutely imperative, right?
Yeah. It's
so you mentioned
critical.
Schools as well,
Yes.
Elma. How did that happen?
So we're currently in the process of trying to look, let me tell you the long-term goal, and then I'll tell you where we are.
Right.
We're trying to get an Elevate Africa trainer in every single school in South Africa.
Oh, wow.
And the mindset of it is, again, there's certain skills that separate you.
Yes.
That regardless of how smart you are, how many degrees you have, there are certain skills that will separate you in this coming future that we have, and public speaking is one of them. And so it shouldn't be a skill that is only accessible to the elite. It should be a skill that is accessible to all. And so what we're trying to get across is this message of, if you're in a high school and you realize that your kids are struggling, because as Africans, is one of the things we struggle with, confidence. We think that our accents are not nice enough. We think that we don't know how to speak English language really well. And so we decide to reduce our voice and lower our tone, and we don't speak in class. But it makes a difference when we go into the workforce, because then
there's no one to save you. There's nowhere to hide.
No one's going to recognize your work. You'll see your colleagues are getting promotions, and you're silently hiding behind because no one's hearing your voice. And so we really want to get trainers out there so we can pass on the gift of public speaking on a country level, and then on an international level, and then on a continental level, in such a way that the same, I think it's Toastmasters that is known a lot in the country. And Toastmasters has been around for over 100 years. It's a century-old company, but it was founded by a white European man. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but as Africans, we speak differently. Toastmasters has a very corporate boardroom way of speech, whereas Whereas as Africans, we're storytellers. In the middle of our speeches, we want to laugh. We want to say yo. We want to say hi.
So you visual, like
so
you talk with your hands, your eyes, and everything.
And we shouldn't be limited by it. We shouldn't all have to do the, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen speech. And so that's where Elevate Africa comes in, redefine what public speaking looks like.
That is absolutely amazing. So more on that when we come back after the break. Welcome back after the break. You are tuned into Visionary Pulse with me, your host Farzana Mayet, in conversation with the incredibly inspiring Elma Akob. So Elma, we were talking about Elevate Africa and, what defines Elevate Africa, the purpose behind it, the intent behind it. That is absolutely inspirational for anybody watching right now, especially for our viewers who would want to start something like this. Because like you've mentioned, whichever race, public speaking is very, very imperative. You've got to be in some facet of your life. You're going to have to take center stage and you're going to have to talk. And that's something that is imperatively important. Let's move on to now another imperative facet that's, defines your profile as well, voiceover artist. How did that come about?
So interesting story. I was making a speech at one of these events, and afterwards someone walked up to me and said, "You've got such a lovely voice. Are you a voiceover artist?" And I remember thinking, what is a voiceover artist? So I went back and I went to Google, Uncle Google, and I searched what is a voiceover artist, and I got introduced to this entire world of work that I didn't even know existed. I thought it was robots that were recording some of these voiceovers, but it turns out it's human beings. And so I got into the skill. And one thing that I want to let people know is when you recognize you're good at something, don't just stop there. Invest. You've got to invest in improving the skill, learn about it, gain knowledge, gain insights, find out what other people are already doing who have been there before you, and then launch that career. So I'm a voiceover artist. For those who don't know what that is, when you walk into Nedbank, and you hear, "Ticket number 1, please head to Tele4." That's my voice. Or when you're walking around the airport, I don't know if it's mine currently or it's another voice, but please make sure not to leave your luggage unattended. That's my voice as well, and a number of others, over 100 different companies. So you've probably heard my voice before, you just haven't seen or known that it was me.
Wow, that is amazing. So you were basically at the right place at the right time.
Exactly.
But again, you found what your passion was and you utilize it to your advantage.
Yeah.
So should anyone wanting to go into voiceover artists, Elma, how can they get in touch with?
So if they can go right to our company website, Elevate Africa Academy. We train voiceover artists as well. We train artists all over the continent. I'm a strong believer that voiceover artists are location-based. So if I'm in South Africa, I shouldn't be hearing an American voice.
Absolutely
If I'm
not.
in Burundi, I shouldn't be hearing a South African voice. And so there should be voiceover artists all over the continent that are speaking for their different nations.
Yes,
and so
definitely.
that's why we are here to train them so that, you can hear the authentic voice when you go into that space. So Elevate Africa Academy, inquire on our website and we'll be able to help you.
Absolutely, that's brilliant. I think that's good. So Elma, tell me now about the TEDx.
Yes.
How did that? That's another thing altogether, right?
It is. It is.
So-
I mean, one thing about my profile is speaking in all of its different facets. It's what I see
Yes.
myself doing. So whether it's public speaking, whether it's being an MC, whether it's being a voiceover artist, or like you rightfully said, being a TEDx speaker. I did a TED talk, I think it was in 2021, called The Dangers of Western Feminism. So one of those topics that is very controversial at the time. Lots of people were really starting to follow the feminist movement without fully understanding what it meant. And I felt like as Africans, we have had a sense of women empowerment for the longest time. We have had queens, we have had
Yes.
matriarchs in societies that we respect. I don't know about you, but where I come from, the oldest woman is the most respected person in a compound. It has nothing to do with gender even, it has to do with age. So whoever is the oldest
The
in the
respect
room
factor comes
gets
in,
the
yes.
most respect in
Right,
the room,
right.
regardless of their gender. And so as Africans as well, we have a culture of we. rather than a culture of I. Whereas the feminist movement is very individualistic in certain aspects. And so I was speaking about how I see the term feminism and how I don't think it really relates to Africans. Not that women empowerment doesn't, but we need to start looking for African terminologies, such as Africanism. Feminism was founded when black people were still being oppressed. Feminism was founded when black people were still, being enslaved. And so when it was created, it was never created with us in mind. It was never created for us, and we've adopted it. There's nothing wrong with it, but we need to pick what we like and leave the rest behind, which is why I started looking at the terms such as Africanism and womanism,
Right.
which speak to that better.
So tell me, when you did your first, public speaking, I've got to ask you this.
Oh,
When you
that's a
did your
great
first
question.
public speaking, what were some of the feelings? How did you psych yourself up to go on the stage and, take center stage and be
Yeah.
the center of attention? Because often enough, and like you said, your voice commands the attention right from the starting. And if you don't command the attention of the crowd, it's a gone case, because nobody's going to then pay attention to your message or anything that
Exactly.
you say henceforth.
Exactly.
So how did that happen?
Great question. I was 16 years old. It was at the UN
16?
headquarters. Yeah, the United Nations headquarters in New York was the first time I spoke at a big international function, and they had brought together a group of 169 youth leaders from all over the world to come and discuss what we see the future looking like as young people. And I was elected to speak out of the 169. And I remember sitting there in the UN headquarters, first of all thinking to myself, how did I get here? Secondly, how did all 169 of these young people who've never met me before elect me to speak on their behalf? And
Yeah, how
so
did that
when
happen? Okay.
it was a voting procedure, and so they asked them, who would you like
Okay.
to speak? And we'd only been around each other for 2 days, but I guess just from hearing me speaking, when I was around them, they thought, yeah, no, she should be the one to speak. And I think every time I speak, I realize, firstly, who am I speaking for and who am I speaking on behalf of? I realize that I have a generation that comes with me. I realize that there are young people who are looking up to me. And so every time I speak with the intentionality of representing them. I do not take it for granted, and I do not take it lightly, because I know that I'm speaking words that others will never get the opportunity to speak on platforms that others will never get an opportunity to speak at. And so psyching myself up is reminding myself of my purpose, of why I'm here,
Yes.
of that I have a voice and I have a responsibility with that voice. It's of reminding myself that my voice is worth being listened to. I think for the longest time we have also questioned our intelligence, our age, our gender, and we've used all these factors to tell us why we are not worthy of certain stages. But I take it upon myself to remind myself that there's a reason why I'm here, and my voice is valid and needs to be listened to. And then thirdly, just speaking from a place of positivity. I think in a very dark and sad world where everything we hear is negative, being cognizant of speaking positivity, because the generations that are coming after us, it's not their fault that the world is where it currently is at.
Absolutely.
And all they are hearing is doom and gloom. And so someone's got to be the light at the end of the tunnel who
Yes.
tells them that no, there was World War I, World War II, World War III. That was all, and now there was COVID-19. We've all survived, that we're still here. We're here for a greater purpose. So
you've just got to find your purpose.
exactly.
Find your zen.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so Elma, where to from here? I've got to ask, where to from here?
From here, so I recently left 9 to 5 to focus on entrepreneurship full time. So I'm focusing on my company, Elevate Africa, becoming a global brand that is known all around the continent, getting into high school so that we can train speakers, and then going into full-time other countries just to make sure that the skill of public speaking is being trained by Africans for Africans.
Brilliant. Okay, that is absolutely amazing. More on that when we come back after the break. Welcome back after the break. You are tuned into Visionary Pulse with me, your host Farzana Mayet, in conversation with Elma Akob. So Elma, we touched on so many aspects, so many facets. You have been so inspiring to not only me, I think our viewers as well will attest to this. So you spoke about the where to from here. I can't wait to gauge your journey there going forward. But, speaking about women empowerment, this is a strong aspect that you really, really do focus on. Can we elaborate on that, please?
Definitely. I think it started off from my family background. So I come from a home where it's all girls. So
Oh, wow.
three
Okay.
of us, 3 girls, mom and dad. And my dad is an academic in all nature. And I'm originally West African, so I was born in Cameroon, but I've lived in South Africa all my life. But being West African, there is normally a pride that comes with having a son and having
All
a
right.
male child and having a boy. But my dad made it his mission that all of his daughters were going to be so good at everything that they did that they would put all the boys to shame.
Hats off to your dad.
That's all to him. And so he supported every single one of our ventures, and the way he supported my mom as well, who's a working woman, which is also something that was new at the time. She was working, and she was independent, and she was traveling. And so my background has played such a huge role in me being the empowered woman that I am today. And I don't take that lightly, because some people don't have those backgrounds, which is
Yes.
why I do what I do. Because I
To
speak
afford
from
them
a
that
place-
same-
Exactly. I speak from a place almost of privilege of having 2 supportive parents who wanted to see their daughters excel and made sure that they did. In fact, as I'm speaking to you, I'm the only one out of 5 people who doesn't have a PhD in my family. So dad has a PhD, mom, and both my sisters have PhDs. I'm currently working on mine.
Okay.
So the fact that the entire family is just going to be a bunch of doctors shows you how excellence is a really big tool that we have in our family. And so women empowerment to me is taking my privilege and passing it on to others and saying, this is the background that I had. It's created this sort of woman where I am confident, I know who I am, and no one can tell me otherwise. Let me speak life into you if you didn't have the same background. Let me remind you that you are an amazing woman. Let me remind you that you are capable of anything you put your mind to. And so empowerment sometimes is just being that voice.
Absolutely.
That
I
positive
do
voice
agree with you there.
that they've never heard before, that voice that's speaking life, that voice that's uplifting. Because when you tell, a woman for the first time that your voice matters, it might be the first time she's hearing it. And that might just change the way she sees herself.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So if you were to give any of our viewers advice, with regards to an inspiring message, what would that be?
I would say, firstly, be bold. It's very hard to notice yes, you can notice a candle under a table, but it's easier to notice the candle when it's on the table. And so stop dimming your own light. Be bold, be proud, speak up for yourself. A lot of the times people say, let your work speak for you. You have a mouth, speak for yourself. Let
Yes,
your
the work
follow.
will speak, let the
will.
work follow, but obviously
But speak.
you've got to lead.
Exactly. And then dare to dream. I think you can only dream as far as your mind allows you. And sometimes we don't realize that people's circumstances have caused them to dream very small dreams. And so my encouragement is dare to dream that big dream. Just dare and see what happens.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And one inspiring quote that makes you wake up in the morning, Elma, before we love and leave you.
One inspiring quote. There's a quote of my own. It's, being the first is important, but real impact is made when you ensure that you are not the last, by bringing others along with you on the journey.
Oh, and that's going to be quoted in history by Elma Akob, right?
Yes.
Elma, thank you so much for joining me. It has been a privilege having you on Visionary Pulse.
Thank you so much for having me.
So that brings us to the ending of another wonderful segment of Visionary Pulse. Join me again next week as I bring you another game changer and change maker. This is Farzana Mayet. Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening to you.